r/NoSleep. Posted by you/thepoisonedantidote. The neighbors invited me for dinner. All of my survival instincts tell me I'm in danger. My next-door neighbors are an odd bunch. Sure, they have top-of-the-line furniture and vehicles, but everything was honestly quite outdated. It looked like everything was old, but in between aged and antique, so they kinda just looked ugly. But, like I said, everything looked really pricey. Like super expensive hand-me-downs. I say next-door neighbors, but they are really a couple of clicks to my right. We all live in an expansive closed community, all with nice houses and acres of wilderness separating us. It's honestly quite beautiful, and if anyone is able to get the money to live in one of these areas, I highly recommend to check them out. As long as the neighbors aren't quite like these ones. I get it. They're rich, they're eccentric. Those often go hand in hand, but these people in general have just always put me at unease. When my wife and I were invited over to their place to have dinner, I wasn't ecstatic about it, but my wife convinced us to go and just check the place out. Maybe they were simply misunderstood. The invitation was a literal invitation. When I said outdated, I meant really outdated. We had a letter hand-delivered to our residence by their butler, who also gave me the creeps, and we opened it up to find the invitation beautifully handwritten inside with amazing calligraphy. The letter, word for word, went like this. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Redacted. Sorry for such a late welcoming letter, we seldom have the time for such formalities but found some for tomorrow. We would be most grateful to have you both for dinner over at our manor, and would love to share our rich familial culture with you and your wife. Hope to see you soon. Sincerely, the Redacted S. Something about the letter felt wrong, but when my wife shrugged it off, so did I. The day came to go over to their manor, but of course, she came down with a stomach bug and couldn't make it. So now I had to go alone. I arrived there on what I supposed was to be on time, since no time was labeled, about 4 p.m., and was greeted with an extremely attractive young man and woman. They were already outside of the front door when I showed up, and something told me they were waiting there for a while. Everything about these people were flawless, but dated. Perfect skin, perfect clothes, perfect teeth, perfect hair. It felt like I took a step backward in time. The only thing that truly looked old were their eyes. I worked at a nursing home as a young adult, and I could recognize old eyes anywhere. Walking into their house was a true blast to the past. It felt like I really time traveled, except everything was covered in dust from lack of use except for the kitchen and the dining room, which was already set up magnificently. We had small talk in the dusty lounge area for a couple hours before we began to eat. Nothing really stemmed from the conversations, but while I felt awkward from it, they kept on smiling, but not really with me. They smiled at me. When we finally went over to the dining area, we passed by a door that was halfway open, and faint noises could be heard from down the stairs. I guess my body language showed an interest in it because the woman announced there was nothing to be seen down there, twirled her finger and the door magically slammed shut. I thought I must have been seeing shit, but they kept on heading, so I followed. Every survival instinct inside of me told me to leave right away. But I wouldn't be telling this story if I did. We sat down to eat, and started off with some wine. As soon as the first sip hit my lips, I felt an instant craving to eat. They must have noticed this because they sent out the butlers with food to me, well, really only meat. I began to devour uncontrollably, failing to notice at the time that I was the only one eating. They just sat there, watching. I ate about 3 times what I could normally stomach, in about half the amount of time it would normally take me for a regular meal. After that, I felt extremely bloated and very sick, as one normally would after going on such an endeavor. They then brought a glass of liquor for me to drink, saying it's an old family remedy that'll make me feel better. I'm not the biggest fan of liquor, but in order to not offend them I pretended to drink it anyways. Besides, every cell in my body told me not to drink that, and something was wrong. Even just the whiff of vapor from the drink made me feel unnaturally tired. Deciding that I need to purge what I ate immediately, despite it tasting so good, I feigned stomach issues and asked where the nearest restroom is. They told me through the kitchen and to the left. I get up and walk to the kitchen. After I was out of sight, I walked a little faster, almost breaking into a light jog. I noticed that absolutely no one was in the kitchen right now, and found it sinister. Looking around, I noticed mine and my wife's photo laying on one of the counters. Curiosity gets the best of me, so I detoured to take a look. I probably should have left by now, but I needed to find out why the photo was there. Before I headed over, something about the invitation came to mind after seeing a cookbook next to the picture. Next to the photo was that old, tattered, handwritten cookbook, already open to a page. I didn't pay too much attention until I saw a detailed drawing of the human anatomy. There was no title on the page, but it was the last words on the page that shook me. Flesh is most potent when victim consumes its own kind. And then my stomach gurgled. The next story of this video. Posted by you/Life is Strange Me Too. The treasure hunt in the woods. It was a bright October day, cool and crisp, and the autumn leaves dazzled with every hue of orange and golden brown. Karen and I had come on this hike with a mission in mind, and we had almost made it to our objective. "I can't believe we're doing this," I said, chest burning from the effort of the climb. "Come on," said Karen, looking back at me and laughing. "How often do you get the chance to go on a real-life treasure hunt?" "Treasure might be a generous word," I said. "I know your uncle was eccentric, but I can't imagine him being crazy enough to bury something of real value in these woods." "It doesn't matter if it's valuable or not," said Karen. "It was his last request. We look for it. We can't just ignore him." "Yeah," I said, sucking in a deep breath of the pine needle-scented air as I summited the hill, "I know." I pulled the map out of my pack and unfolded it, tracing our path out with my pencil. "It's supposed to be right here," I said. "And there should be a giant boulder to mark the burial site." I looked around, but all I could see was a sea of dead leaves. Karen shook her head and laughed, stepping over a rotted log as she made her way towards me. "I shouldn't have given you the map," she said. "You can't find your way through Walmart. How did I expect you to navigate the woods?" "Look," I said, tapping on the map with my pencil, "we followed the directions exactly. It's supposed to be here. I'm sure of it." Karen's sweat-scented hair brushed my cheek as she looked at the map over my shoulder. "Yeah," she said, "you followed the map exactly. There's just one little problem." "What?" She pulled the map out of my hands and turned it around before handing it back to me. "It's upside down," she said. I clapped my hand to my forehead and sighed. "How far did we go in the wrong direction?" I asked. "Not far," she said. "I figured that we br." Karen was interrupted by a rumbling noise that shook the ground beneath our feet. I lost footing on the loose floor of leaves and slid to my knees. "What the hell was that?" I said, standing up and brushing the dead leaves off from my pants. "It must have been an earthquake," she said. "We're not on a fault line," I replied, but Karen wasn't listening. She traced the map with her finger. "We've only gone 500 meters in the wrong direction," she said. "We're way too close to quit now." "Fine," I said, folding up the map and stowing it back in my pack. "But I want a back rub after all of this is over." "I'll give you more than a back rub," Karen said. She gave me a wink, and I knew that for better or worse, I had no choice but to come along. It took us 20 minutes of hiking to get to the spot marked on the map. Sure enough, the boulder was sitting right where it was supposed to be. We hadn't heard another sound since the first one, which made me feel a little better about our treasure hunt. Karen kicked the dead leaves away from the base of the boulder, and then knelt down, an excited grin lighting up her face. "It's here," she said. "We found it. Look." I knelt down and saw there was a concrete X at the foot of the boulder. I knelt down and traced the rough surface with my fingers. "We're supposed to dig due south of it," she said, sliding the pack off of her shoulder and dropping it into the dirt. "You ready to finish this?" I slid my pack off too and pulled the shovel out. "No," I said. "But let's get it over with anyway." "That's the spirit," Karen said, pulling out her own collapsible shovel and sliding the handle out before locking it into place. She stabbed the shovel into the ground, and I followed her example. The dirt was packed tight and hard, and I knew it would be at least an hour of digging before we reached the specified depth. 15 minutes later my back was aching and my hands were beginning to blister. I decided it was time to take a break. "Hey Karen?" I said, tossing down my shovel and sitting down in the dirt, leaning my back against the hard, cool surface of the boulder. "Yeah?" she said. "Can you smell that?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "I told you not to have Mexican for lunch." "Be serious," I said. "That hole smells like something's rotting in there." Karen shrugged. "What's dirt supposed to smell like?" she asked. "I'm not kidding," I replied. "You know I was an army nurse in Afghanistan." "So?" "So," I said. "I've smelled a lot of death. And that hole smells like death." Karen paused and leaned on her shovel. "So you want to just quit now and go home?" she asked. "I didn't say that," I replied. "If you quit now, you're not gonna get your back rub," she said. "And you're definitely not gonna get your happy ending." "Fine," I said. "Let's dig. But I want 2 massages. Don't get greedy." She picked her shovel up and stabbed into the dirt with renewed vigor, and the shovel broke through something and slid out of her hands, falling into the cavern and sending a clattering echo up through the hole that remained. "Shit," I said, "is that a cavern down there?" We leaned over the crack in the earth, and a cool air drifted out of the crevice, carrying the rotten stench of death up to our nostrils. "Br." The tree-shaking sound came once again, and this time we both lost footing, stumbling forward into the fissure. The ground gave way beneath us, and we fell into the darkness. The air rushing past us was cold and damp, tainted with the stench of old dirt intermingled with rotting meat. My breath was knocked out as I hit the cavern floor. "Shit," said Karen, her voice rebounding off the stone walls of the cavern. "I think I broke my ankle." I wiped the sweat off my forehead as I stared up at the hole we'd fallen through. From this distance it was just a tiny crack of light. It was a wonder we weren't dead. I sat up and rubbed the back of my aching head, and my hand came away sticky with dirt-caked blood. I crawled my way toward Karen and felt her ankle. "Yeah," I said. "It's broken." "David?" she said. "Yeah, honey? Our supplies are at the top." "I know, honey. What are we gonna do?" "You stay here and call for help," I said. "I'll follow the cavern through and see if it comes out topside somewhere else. There's a breeze coming from inside, so it must come out somewhere." I didn't say anything about why I thought the breeze smelled like death. "Oh no," Karen said. "You're not leaving me here. Splint my ankle." "All right," I said. "I'll splint it with the shovel." I was reaching for the shovel when I froze. Something was wrong. The wind had changed direction. It was now pulling inward, deeper into the cavern. Karen and I looked at each other in silence. A few seconds later the wind changed direction again, blowing out towards us, the heady, noxious stench of death along with it. My stomach dropped as I recognized the pattern of the change. It wasn't the wind we were feeling at all. It was breathing.